All right. Everyone seeing the book now?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Now, as we go through this, I had a question last week about Strepho right here. The word Strepho right here. And the form that we have here is irregular. I went through a book, a grammar book. I reference it in this file that I'm going to show you in a minute. It's by Ward Powers. Ward Powers, Powers, but it's in the bibliography. And it's on pages 238 and 239 of that book that I'm going to be referring to in just a minute, okay? So again, this is being recorded so you look at it. Now, here's the situation. Strepho is irregular in the passive, aorist passive, and also in the future passive. So we're going to come over here and look at it. See, here's your stem right here, strep. That's what I thought last week. So there's your stem. So right here, we take our stem and the phi, we keep our phi, so we take our stem and there's a difference. So instead of an epsilon here, we have an alpha. Everyone see that? So the stem changes. So let's go over here now. Let's look at right here, Greek lexicon. I added this to it. So I want you to go through this with me. I'm going to digress a little bit. I'm going to show you how to use the lexicon a little better. All right. What I've done is I've taken the word Strepho. Now, I sent this file to you earlier today, but this part that I've highlighted here was not in the file. I added it after I sent it to you. When I send it to you again, this will be in the file, okay? But this is right out of Thayer's lexicon. So I want to show how to use Thayer's lexicon. Other lexicons are of the same nature. That is, at least the two or three that I have, okay? Now, I do have one lexicon by Souter that's very brief, and it doesn't have this in it. All right, so be aware of that. Right here, Strepho, it shows a first aorist. Now then, because it doesn't tell you what it is, this is active. This is active voice. It doesn't have a label on it. It's automatically active. So it has a first aorist. There's the form, and this is singular, first person singular, first aorist, active. It has a passive now. It labels it for you. So it has a present passive form, and right there, there's your first person singular present passive. But this is really middle passive. Remember that. So that it has. Then it has a second aorist passive over here. Well, he's already got your first aorist over here. So it's a second aorist right here. So right here now, you notice here the stem changed. And so right here, we have, instead of, here's, and I added this stem to it right here. There's your stem, there's your root rather. And so if we change that epsilon right here, come on, baby, get out of the way. All right, change that epsilon to an alpha right there. So there's your stem, and the epsilon change down here changed to an alpha. And so I've got it labeled now. Here's your basic root. And so what happened is it's irregular in the aorist passive. It's also irregular in the future passive. Does anyone know why it would be irregular in the future passive if it's irregular in the aorist passive? Because they're built off the same form. So if it's irregular in the aorist, it's going to be irregular in the future. Does that make sense? They're built off the same form. All right. So so I've got it labeled here for you. Now, what I've done is I've taken this book that I have by Ward Powers that I gave you the reference a moment ago. It has a list of all the verbs in the New Testament that are irregular and in what tenses they're irregular. Guess what I did for you? I typed those all in this file that you have. Now, the only thing that you don't have that I've added to the file that I sent it to you today is this that I've highlighted. And I'm just showing you right here now. What this tells me is it has aorist, it has a first aorist active in the New Testament. It has a middle passive present in the New Testament. It has a second aorist passive in the New Testament. And those are the only tenses and the voices that it has in the New Testament, this word. It does not have an active, present active form in the New Testament. It doesn't exist in the New Testament. It doesn't have a future in the New Testament. Notice it's not listed here. All we have is these three listed. So it doesn't have a future. The word is not in the future tense in the New Testament. It's not in the imperfect tense. It's not in the perfect tense. It's only in the aorist active, aorist passive, and present passive, middle passive. Any question there?
Yes. The having two forms for the aorist, first aorist and second aorist.
Yep. So it's a first aorist active and it's a second aorist passive.
Okay.
It's irregular.
Okay. Yeah.
There's your basic root. Let's walk through it now. Here's your root in the aorist. Now remember, the aorist adds a sigma to it, doesn't it? Aorist active, so it adds a sigma. When you add a sigma to a phi over here, it becomes a C. C. So that's how you get the C out of the phi plus the sigma. See, right here's your stem. Right here, your root, and there it is right there. It didn't change. So it's just right here. That's it. Over here, it becomes irregular. And so I've labeled it for you as irregular. But it's irregular in the aorist in the future. So right here, instead of an epsilon here, it has an alpha. That's what changed. Now you can see what the new stem, the new root is in the irregular form by just walking through it. You got your augment here, and there's your ain ending for us. Now let's go back over here and look at it. Your ain ending in our book, your ain ending, it doesn't have a phi, so what we have there's your ain ending. I'm sorry, your ain ending's here. There's your ain ending. So it always gives it in the first person singular form. So now then, let's go back over here, and there it is. So there's your root that changed because it's irregular. All that changed was the epsilon becoming alpha. And we have the ain ending first person singular, and there's your augment. Does that help a bit with the use of these lexicons?
Yes, sir. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Now, let me point out, I didn't count them, but there's something like 20, 25 verbs that have an irregular form in the aorist future passive. Aorist and future passive. But every one of them is labeled in this file that I sent you. They're all labeled. Now then, when I point this out, I want you to be aware that this is not saying that other verbs aren't irregular. Okay? For instance, this verb right here, I don't know, I haven't checked it. It might be irregular in a tense that's not found in the New Testament. Does that make sense? Well, this word's not in the New Testament. Okay, let me find another one up here. This word up here may not be, it may be irregular in some forms that are not found in the New Testament. So this book that I have only listed the forms that are irregular in the New Testament. It didn't list or they're irregular in tenses that we don't find in the New Testament. So this will not help you if you're using it for the Septuagint. It might be irregular in the Septuagint, or it might be irregular in what's called patristic Greek. Patros is father, so the church fathers, they call them. All right, and those Greek writers of the 2nd and 3rd century and so forth, in some of those writings. Or if you tried to read, let's say you tried to read some other book like, I don't know, Josephus. It was written in Greek if you tried to read it in Greek. I'm not trying to get you to where you're capable of doing graduate research in Greek, okay? I'm trying to get you strictly for the New Testament. And of course, I believe being able to read the Septuagint and others out of the Greek is very helpful, very useful. So if some of you young fellows want to do that and go further in this, that's fine with me, and I'm happy for you. But I'm not trying to help you do that right here. Is that clear? I'm just strictly limiting my work to the New Testament. Okay. All right. So, any questions now? I'm going to go up to Kuo, and we'll try it. We'll take 3 weeks on this lesson. Is that clear? So I'm going to try to do a little more work here. Kuo. Find it. There it is. There's a Kuo. Kuo is an interesting word, but we'll not spend much more time with it. But I want you to notice here, Kuo, the root is a ku, and it's irregular in the perfect active. And so in the perfect active, it's irregular, all right? In the perfect. Now that doesn't say present active, perfect active. And so that's irregular. Another word that's irregular in the perfect is the word, well, we had it already. We've had one or two already in an earlier tense. Fugo and quadzo are irregular, and kuo. And of course, we have oida. It's from Ido. Oida is very common, and it's irregular. All right, that's in the perfect. There's two words that are irregular in the future middle deponent. In the future middle deponent, esteo is I eat, and pino is I drink. Those are irregular, but they're labeled. They're labeled in this file that I sent you. Every one of them that's irregular is labeled. So now, if you think a verb might be irregular, you can just check this file. Any questions? I think the file is getting better and better with time, but if I get to be 120, I'll have a good file if I live to be that old. Any questions? That's a joke. I'm not going to live that long. Okay. All right. Are there any questions? Okay. Now, it always listed in the first person singular. All right. So that ending is what you'll find there. You won't list these other endings. It's not necessarily that that's what's found in the New Testament. That's the standard way to list it. So you can look at that ending. You can figure out what your root is. Graph was your root. Let's go to grapho and see it now, and we can see that we can figure out graph is my root here, and that's your augment. There's your first person singular ending. Let's come over to grapho now, right here, gamma. And I'll search for gamma. Is, and then be down a ways. I did mess up. I hit the wrong one. This is in my way. I needed to hit cancel. Okay. Let's try it again. That is not good. Are you still there? Can you still see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me do this then. I'll go back. Well, it is not doing it for me. There. Gamma delta went too far. Not many words of gamma. Grapho right there. See, my root is graph. See, my root is graph. So let's go back and let's look at our root and see how there's your root. That's my root right there. It's labeled here. We'll come back over here to this file now. There is your root, graph. And all we do is add an augment and an ain ending, and that's it. So we have graph there. But grapho is irregular in something here. It's irregular in the aorist future, I think. Let's look at grapho again. All right. It's a word is found in both regular and irregular forms. This word is found, it's irregular in the aorist future passive. It's irregular. This word is found in both irregular and regular forms. So in the aorist and the future, sometimes it's irregular and sometimes it's not. Is that clear? And that would probably be different dialects of the Greek. All right. So there are some, and it may be different manuscripts. It may be some of the manuscripts are different. Now, here's what happened in some of your manuscripts. They think that some of the scribes wanted to make the Bible more highbrow, if you want to call it that, in the sense that they went back and used some old classical Greek forms. And so some of your manuscripts have the words in classical form and other ones have it in the Koine. And that may be what we see here, because I know that happened. And of course, after a while, they decided they shouldn't be messing with the text. And they shouldn't have been messing with it to begin with. Okay, no one should have. But anyhow, that's my way of looking at the Bible. Don't change it at all. You're messing with something you shouldn't be messing with. Everyone agree? Don't change God's word at all. There's a curse for you if you do that. All right, any questions? So I wanted you to see this here. This is probably just manuscript forms, but I can't be sure about that. I haven't researched that. But so the ones that are irregular and regular forms in the New Testament, that would be in this aorist future passive. The ones that are in both forms are labeled like this that I've got highlighted with it. So they're labeled for you. You have a warning of it, right? I suspect it's textual variants, but grapho is there enough times. I just didn't have time to research it. All right. Any questions? All right. Okay. I did akuo and I did grapho, and we did strepho. All right. And let's do esteo, and then we'll gamma delta epsilon. Let's see. There it is. Esteo, and it's also spelled estho. So there are two spellings of it, and that may be just manuscript differences. Two different ways of spelling. Remember, the Brits don't spell the word vapor right. They spell it V-A-P-O-U-R. We spell it V-A-P-O-R. We spell it right. Just trying to be funny now. But right here from over down to eat, and it's irregular. There's your fog. All right, so it's irregular. In the future, middle, deponent, and that's irregular in that form. All right. So again, it has a different root there. That root. Remember, some of those words are basically from different words that they put together. We went through that earlier. I'm going to stop on this. Or do you have any questions now before I go back to the book? Anybody? Did I spend too much time on that? I hope I didn't, but
not at all. Thank you.
Be sure we can see what we got here. All right. All right. Again, the root changed here, but all changed, the alpha changed, okay? All right, now we have also here, we talked about these words here. Any question there? We talked about the changes in the sound of them. They put them together so you can make them sound better. Euphonic, good sound. I think we got down to about right in here. We did see balo, the root ball, it reverses here. the lambda alpha reverses. I pointed that out in Kaleo also. Those two words are found quite a few times. And so it reverses as well. So we do have this. We do have a change in the form. It reverses. And so blah, instead of BAL, it becomes BLA, beta alpha lambda, beta lambda alpha. Right, so that happens on a few of them right there. All right. Other questions? Okay. Now, I've forgotten exactly where we got down to. Does anyone remember? I didn't look at the lecture again. I forgot to look at it right before class. All right.
I think we're at mute stems.
Mute stems. Okay, let's just start with that. Verbs in mute stems suffer euphonic changes like those explained in section 200. So now we're in section 208. We have to go back a lesson or two back. All right. Ago, I lead, becomes a thing. And so we have here. And so they suffer euphonic changes. All right. And so we get that change. There's your augment. Alpha becomes an eta. And then your stem changes. Gamma becomes a key. So it changes. The gamma becomes a key. And so then there's your thane ending. Okay. All right. Take numi, I show, kind of like I demonstrate, it changes. And so there's your augment, there's your thane ending. So there's what it changes into. And so dake, and I'm not sure dake is probably the root, but right there, the kappa becomes a key. That's this kappa here becomes a key. That's what happens there. Lapo, and so right here, there's a lapo. It becomes that. The P, the pi, becomes a phi, to make it sound a phi, and a P and a theta can't be pronounced very well together, but a phi, phthane. So you can pronounce them better. They sound better together, a phi and a theta, rather than a pi and a theta. That's what they're trying to say. There's your augment. And of course, there's your basic root. So the pi becomes a phi. That's what they're trying to get you to see there, right there. That happens from time to time. All right. Any questions? All right. All these changes are good for studying. Most stems are the same type, react in the same way. And the best way to learn it is learn the principal parts. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to spend, I think, 2 lessons away from the principal parts. We'll be looking at them just in 2 more lessons. But our contract verbs lengthen the stem vowels as usual in all tenses except the present system. Before the tense sign, poieo, there's your contract vowel L, and then the poi, and the epsilon lengthens into an eta. So your epsilon lengthens to an eta. Then you have a thane ending. There's your augment, and there's your ending of the first person singular. So your epsilon in that root becomes an eta. That epsilon becomes an eta. So it lengthens. That's what they're trying to tell you there. Any questions? All right. Now, we right here, we don't have this word in our vocabulary, but it's analambano. It's from analambano. Let me do this. I'll hit the caps lock. Now, if I drag this over, it's going to be in bold print, but I'm not going to worry about it. Symbol font. There's our word without there'll be a smooth breathing on alpha, and I think on acute on the alpha right here. Okay. Alpha lambano, so on a lambano. So we're going to put our augment right here. The alpha becomes an epsilon, goes after the preposition. Remember that, that's where it goes. And then your lambano. Now remember, lambano does what? All right. The alpha and mu reverse places. I'll keep that in mind here. So that's a problem. And so we have this lambano, all right, and we have let's say, okay, and so that changes, and the alpha then becomes an eta. Alpha becomes an eta, all right. You have a thane ending. I was received up, right? Are there questions about that one? Okay. All right. Gamos. That's marriage. And of course, it's a masculine verb, a noun rather, masculine noun. And this is your genitive form. Okay. Gamos. There's your article. All right. A marriage. And it could be even a feast, a marriage feast. All right. Eta, and that's the word then. All right. And it's kind of, I think it's a shortened form, or like an abbreviated form of this word here, epeta, epita. Who we have from Caruso, the first aorist passive of Caruso, and Caruso. And so right here, there's your form. And you have an alpha. This becomes an alpha right here, Caruso. Let's go back over to our form of Caruso. Caruso is one that is irregular. You can tell that here. It's irregular in the aorist passive. It's first aorist passive here, but it's irregular. So let's go back and look at Caruso, and we'll find that in just a minute. And I'll go to Kappa. Caruso, it's an eta. And I should have it labeled here. Right. There it is. I don't have it labeled. Ooh. I'll take care of that. Caruso should be labeled. I think. No, it's not. It's not irregular. I'm sorry. Yes, it is. I don't know why I don't have it labeled. I apologize to that. I will take care of that after class. But that is irregular. Okay. I missed it. I'll have to do that. Okay. All right. Epano. And so what we do is it's above. And Eusebia. And this is, of course, good. And this is piety. This word is translated two different ways. It's piety whenever it's referring to your treatment of people, like you show piety towards your mother and grandmother in 1 Timothy 5. And it's the word that's used. And it's godliness when it's directed at God. Same Greek word. And it's like our word blasphemeo is blasphemy when it's directed at God or something that's holy. And it's evil speech or railing when it's for a human, a person. Okay. And we have eschaton, and this is last. And the word eschatology is the study of last things. Okay. Etaphain is I was buried. There's passive of thopto. and that's aorist passive. So right here, we'd have to go back and see what our root was, but we have thopto here. Thopto may be irregular. Right. Yes, it's irregular. Thopto is irregular also. Okay. So it's irregular. We can tell that by the fact here that right there, we don't have that. That's not the same as this over here. Thopto. Okay. Probably that's your stem right there, the red. Okay. So it's irregular. Okay. If once for all, and this is once for all time. This word is an interesting word because something can happen once for all time. The sacrifice of Jesus was once for all time. I thought that had a rough breathing on it, but I guess it doesn't. I was trying to put a rough breathing on it. And in the original book, it doesn't. I don't guess it has. I just thought it had a rough breathing. Katangelo, Kamagama is an NG sound. See, angelo is I bring a message, I proclaim. And so this is pass the word along or pass it down, see. But if God is doing it, it would come down from God. We'd think of it that way. Mega, and this is a prefix in English now. It's a metric prefix, meaning a million, or it's the word great. A megaphone makes the sound greater. Think of it that way. Phone is Greek for sound, and mega is great. Ophane, and this I've seen this from Horao. I think this is also irregular, right? And of course, Strepho, we went through it in detail. It's irregular as well. Any questions? And what was that word that I didn't have in there? I'll check it. Caruso, I'll make sure I fix it later, okay? All right, any questions anyone has? All right. Now, did you get into any of the translations at all? Anybody?
Yes.
All right. Did I talk about the textual variant here last week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So what we've got is we got two different texts. One reads he who, and the other one reads God. Okay. And the most frequent text that read God. And I think they purposely changed it because they didn't want Jesus to be God. Right. And I think we had some people messing with the text for that reason. This is, of course, 1 Timothy 3:16, right out of the Bible. Exactly right out of the Bible. There is a textual variant here, but I think everything else is the same. Then this text down in here, as you probably notice that, it is from 1 Corinthians 15:3-8 with some slight modifications in it. Okay. But now, if you look at all these endings here, thane, they're all what? All of them are. All six of them are what? What
Aorist
tense?
passive.
They're aorist passive. Every one of them are. Everyone see that? That's pretty cool, wasn't it? Now, the thought by some is, some of the writers, so-called scholars, they think this is an early hymn of the church that they sang. And that this goes through all of the aspects of Jesus. And that's entirely possible. One of the reasons they think it is because it's poetic. Well, I would argue this. The fact that it's poetic doesn't prove it was a hymn. All right? It proves it could be a hymn, but it doesn't prove it necessarily was. But I think it might have been a hymn in the church that they sang. We don't know for sure. There's no way of knowing, I don't think. Any questions now? All right, we've got about 10 minutes, and we can look at anything else you'd like to look at. let me give you one other thing before we get too far into this. I'm going to go into a file. I'm going to get another file here and go into it. Let me do this. Appendix G. My Role of Women book, Appendix G. Get to it in just a minute. There it is. What this does, I go through how to use a lexicon. Had you noticed that I pointed that out to you earlier? And what I did is the word that's translated expounded in Acts 18:26. And I've been arguing here that the lexicons don't have the right definition of that word. And again, you say, well, here's Marion. I know I'm not anything important. I understand that. But you need to understand my arguments at least to see what my arguments are. I also reference in my Volume 1 Work of the Holy Spirit book, give the page numbers here, the Greek word translated earnest, arabon. But I'll take the word actithemy here, and what we do is, I'm going to go through it just quickly, it's just going to take our time here. But you can study this on your own if you like. But here is the complete reference. Here's how Thayer enters it. So let's kind of get some more information about how to use the lexicon. The word is actithemy. Let's go back and look at the word. It's actithemy right here. I have highlighted. And how they break it down? Well, they put a hyphen here between the preposition and the basic word. It's actithemy. Tithemy is to place or set, S-E-T. And so actithemy. And so it's found in the first aorist passive as a participle. There's the form. The middle imperfect, there's your form. Second aorist is found there. And that's how it's found. So we don't find it in the future or present tense. See, we only find it in the first aorist passive, a participle, imperfect, and second aorist. All right. And of course, it's an ain ending, so that's passive, isn't it? Everyone agree? So we find it only in those tenses, and one time it's a participle, right? So it's imperfect or aorist, or it's a participle. That's in all the places it's found. Now, these right here are the ways that it's translated, or that the lexicographers say it means, as to expose an infant, okay? And they appeal to this passage, Acts 7:21, it's Roman numerals, and then come down here and metaphorically to set forth, declare. That's his interpretation, right? And he's probably right. We have Acts 11:4, and then we have certain ones, Acts 18:26, Acts 28:23. Those are listings of it. These are the various sources they have consulted to get the meaning of the word. Is that clear? Right? That would be Josephus' Antiquities. This is Aristotle's writing, one of his writings. And Thayer will tell you what these mean, what these abbreviations here mean in the first part of his book, in the preface. Right, this is on page 200. See this symbol right here, that asterisk? That symbol means every time, every instance of where this word is found in the New Testament is listed in this reference. In this reference here, every place that it's found is listed. So where's it listed? Well, it's Acts 7:21. It is found in Acts 11, 4, Acts 18:26, and Acts 28:23. That's the only place in the New Testament the word's found. See how we can use it now? That's a full reading out of there. It's a compound word. It's akantithemy. And are there questions? It's a me verb. See how that works? Everyone see it? Any questions? All right. We'll go a little further into it. And I explain all that down here and explain what this symbol right here means. And it tells the reader that all the passages where the word is found in the New Testament are listed. Then I take all of those passages and look at them in detail. All right. But let me point out, how do lexicographers, how do they determine the meaning of it? Well, they went to all these sources right here. All right. They went to these sources to get their information, extra biblical sources, to see what it means there. Now, Thayer places the passage as metaphorical. All right. But that's his interpretation. Let's go back to his entry up here so you be aware of it. What he puts in italics right here, those are his definitions. In a metaphorical, he claims these are the definitions in a metaphorical sense. Is that clear? All right. Now, properly in the infant is just his interpretation. So when he puts it in regular print, it's his interpretation, but this is his definition. Those are defining. So that's how Thayer puts his in there to define it. He puts it in italics. All right. Let's come down here. I want to show you one other thing they do. We've gone to Aristotle. He's gone to Aristotle. This fella here, Josephus' Antiquities, and another book. We'll have to look in there and see what that title is. But those are his 4 basic sources. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 basic sources. Now then, we ask the question, is the word used elsewhere in Greek language? The answer is emphatically yes. Why didn't he cite them? I don't know. I have no idea why he didn't cite them. I look at all the passages in detail, but right here, I'd say the definitions are always placed in italics in Thayer and most other lexicons. There's your definitions. And all the references here are your extra biblical sources where the word is used. And he gives the metaphorical. Anytime that Thayer places any passage in a category, categorize it, he's giving his theological opinion. And so you don't take that to be a definition. He categorized them. Okay? And his theological might influence how he categorizes any passage. Be aware of that. You have to be aware of that. Now then, here's the problem. The LXX, what's the LXX? Somebody help me out.
Septuagint.
Yep, that's the Septuagint, okay? So what we have is the Septuagint is what we have. He doesn't cite them in the Septuagint. Well, lo and behold, it's found in all these passages in the Septuagint. Huh? Why didn't he cite them? That makes you wonder, doesn't it? Now, in fact, if he'd given consideration to the Septuagint, he might have had a different definition. Okay. So, lust, and that's a man's name. That's a Septuagint, an LXX lexicon, and they define it as to make manifest, to publish, to expose, to set forth, or publish. That's how it's used in the Septuagint. And here are all the passages where it's found in the Septuagint. Interesting. I list every single one of them, and I put the Greek form, I put the English translation of it, and I put the Greek every time it's found right there so you can see it. In most of these passages, the word antithemy refers to a written document. Now, Bauer and Gingrich, in their preface of their lexicon, said, as for the influence of the LXX, that's your Septuagint, every word of this lexicon shows that it outweighs all other influences on our literature. they admit that the Septuagint should have more influence upon our definition than any other source other than the New Testament. But guess what? Bauer, and Gingrich and Thayer don't even reference the Septuagint. They don't give a reference to it at all. They don't cite a single passage from the Septuagint where it's found. But they admit that that it outweighs right there what they say. That amazes me. I think they had bias when they translate when they're using it. The Dell and Scott in the classical Greek lexicon, they define it this way: to set out, expose, and right here, they're citing a newborn child, but right here to set up in a public exhibit publicly. The expose, see, set out, place outside. Moulton and Milligan, which is Greek altogether, lexicon, to post up a notice and to write a document and post it on the notice board in large letters. This is a public announcement. Okay, that's what that is, and that's Moulton and Milligan. All right. Now, guess what it means in modern Greek? It means to write a treatise. Okay, and I document down here further on that. I argue in this part of the book that I read in this electronic copy, I argue that it ought to be the posting of a notice. And I think what we find here is when they expounded unto him the word of God, I think they gave him copies of the New Testament. They gave him copies of it. And I think I could prove that, and I think I do prove that in my book. All right. Now then, you don't have to agree with me, but I want you to see I do discuss this in this right here and how they define it. Here is Thayer. There's a noun form of it. Actually, an adjective form of this word that's used in the New Testament, Acts 8, Acts 7, 19. So I give two other related words. All right. And let me see here. Right here. Acts 7:21, that's how it's translated. And I think it should be translated when he had posted, Pharaoh's daughter took, when he was posted. Pharaoh sent out a public notice to kill all the Jewish babies, the children of Israel's sons or boys. And that was a public notice, and I argue for this throughout here. I think what Aquila and Priscilla gave Apollos was a copy of the scriptures. Now I make arguments down here further to establish that point. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop here. We'll come back to the book if we want. If we will, we'll come back to our book and let's close out. Let's start here with section 210 next week, text A. And you've probably already got this done, so let's be sure and go through it and look at it. And you'll have everything worked out. Now this down here, I've told you is 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 8 with some modifications, but it's probably 85% the same as 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 8, right? So let's do this for next week, and then we'll go to the next lesson the following week. Are there questions? Any comments? Okay, let me do this. I'm going to save it. Stop the recording.